The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, March 31st, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Dr. Susan Salvo. Susan Salvo has been a massage therapist for over 40 years and teaches at the LA Institute of Massage Therapy, Unitech Training Academy, and the New Mexico School of Massage. Susan has written several textbooks, reviews case reports for Massage Therapy Foundation, and was a task force member for both the Massage Therapy Body of Knowledge Project and the Council of State Governments Massage Interstate Compact. Susan gives presentations across the United States and the United Kingdom and focuses on advancing the fields of massage, complementary and integrative healthcare, and higher education. A perpetual student herself, Susan is currently enrolled at the University of Louisiana, studying psychology, film, and literature. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Kirby. I appreciate being here today.
Yes, of course. I'm so glad to have you join us, and I'm just ready for this conversation to unfurl and blossom. We like to start here at the podcast asking people about their past, their background, and journey through massage. So take me back. How did you first get started? What was the impetus for massage therapy for you?
Well, it was like the perfect storm for me. I was raised in a single parent household, and I had older siblings and younger siblings. And my older sibling loved quotes. And there was a quote by Katharine Hepburn that was this is before Post-it notes, that was taped to the bathroom, and it was from Katharine Hepburn again. It said, "Life is to be lived, but if you have to earn a living, you better bloody well find something that's interesting." So I just love that. And so I do believe massage is one of those interesting things I could have chosen. Has kept my attention and my interest for over 40 years. I also, about that time, I got pregnant and I had a midwife. I was one of those hippie girls. And my very first massage was done by a midwife. And now we call them doulas, but the term wasn't available back then. And who also focused a lot on herbology. So I think herbs was kind of my gateway, and midwifery was my gateway into massage.
Really?
But also, at the time, we have a lot of refineries in Louisiana. And at the time, there was this big industry where you were getting forced layoffs and early retirements. And I realized very quickly that if you wanted to have job security, you better work for yourself. So, and I saw massage so I had that business side of it and I had that holistic side of it. So I started looking around for massage schools. And first I was in nursing school. And I dropped out of nursing school whenever I had my baby and just never went back.
Oh.
But about that time, that's when I had my first massage and that epiphany of this is the direction I want my life to go. I didn't realize massage therapy was even a professional avenue available to me. So my very first massage school experience was actually in Arkansas.
Really?
Yes, they had a massage school in Springdale.
Yeah. Tell me more.
So I went there and I did not understand it because, this is before the internet. You just had correspondence in the mail. So I actually packed my bags and went up there and realized it was basically a weekend workshop.
Oh.
And so it's like, nah, that's not really what I wanted. So I went from Springdale to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and literally couch surfed and even slept in tents in people's backyards. So I could go through massage school there. And it was just a mind-blowing, life-changing experience for me.
Gotcha. What time would that have been? What year, Dr. Salvo, do you think?
1980 to 83 was kind of that phrase. I had my first child in 1981, and then 1982 was when I started going through massage school and graduated in 1983. So in 1984 is when I was at the right time, the right place. It was perfect because that's kind of when America had its first explosion with massage therapy in terms of sports massage. I don't know if you knew that or not. 1984, Mary Decker won the gold medal for her running. And she gave a lot of her credit to her massage therapist, Richard Puig. And it was like all of a sudden, massage therapy was on the map.
Yeah.
And my business exploded within a relatively short amount of time. And so, and that's when people like Whitney Lowe came in the scene, Benny Vaughn came in the scene, Robert King came on the scene, and this is before we had day spas or franchises, but it was sports massage that really carried the torch for a long time, and psychology. We'll talk about that in a second. But those two things were kind of parallel that kind of created job opportunities for people getting out of massage school, because you couldn't just, fill a job applicant. People back in the 80s had to kind of pioneer their way in and blaze the trails for everybody else later.
Right. I want to ask, because it doesn't escape me. I looked it up. Louisiana got their Massage Practice Act in 92. New Mexico, where you took your initial training, it sounds like, got theirs in 91. So you're doing this long before either of those two states were offering licensing for massage therapy.
We still had the AMTA. AMTA was the big certifying body. Back in the 80s, you could graduate from a AMTA approved school. And remember, I know you know history. This was the AMTA with an "and" in it. And so AMTA approved schools were 1,000 hours because you weren't just learning massage. In 85, we even had a tiered system, which I love, very unpopular. I get it. I love AMT had a CMT tier, and then they had an RMT tier. And I actually became an RMT when they had that designation back in 87. Took the test. Robert King was the president. He's the one that actually completely changed the landscape for massage back then. He took out the "and," he dropped it to, let's look at the curriculum that we had. Let's just focus on massage. It was 500 hours. He made that the requirement. But people could be certified in massage before there were licensure. So they paved the way, really. AMT paved the way.
Right. How did you get involved? How did you become aware of the AM and TA at the time?
I went to an AMTA approved school, and when we graduated, I automatically joined the state chapter in New Mexico. At the time, Louisiana did not have a state chapter. In fact, I was a charter member. When I came from New Mexico and moved to Louisiana, I coupled with several other people, men and women in our state, and we had the first charter in 1985, I believe it was.
Wow.
But again, and we would, on state conferences, we would do that certification exam. We had a practical and we had a written. And during the state conferences is when everyone came together to take the test, both sides of it. And then if you pass, you were designated certified massage therapist.
Wow. Very cool. An interesting aspect of history that I think perhaps is kind of lost. Not a lot of people remember or talk about that. So thank you. Talk to me a little bit more about your entry-level education in New Mexico. How established was the school? How did you hear about it? Did they have a staff, or was it kind of a one or two people operation? And how did you enjoy your entry-level education?
Well, it's helpful to understand a little bit about the people sitting in the room. I dropped out of high school in 9th grade.
Wow.
So I have a 9th grade education. I hated education. I always felt stupid, the dumbest person in the room. I had a learning disability. I really struggled with education. So my massage school experience was where I fell in love with education. I felt like I could learn this. Even though I was failing all my anatomy tests, I had to take everything. I was abysmal. And but I knew I didn't have the background, and that's something different. I was able to learn. I just needed to learn differently than everybody else in that room. And I was very grateful to have the teachers that I had. I just loved them, Pat and Carol, and oh my God, Stevens was his last name, Charlie Brown, just amazing teachers, Don Cromwell. They and again, they didn't call themselves a massage school. They were a school of natural therapeutics.
Mm.
How I learned about the AMTA was that, again, they were AMTA approved school, and how I found them was through the AMTA, just mail correspondence. And there was only 14 schools in the country that were AMTA approved. Went there, they were full. They didn't have any enrollments because I just kind of walked in at the right time. And they said, come back the next day. The tuition was $1,800. So I called my parents and I said, can I borrow $1,800? And went back the next day to put in an application for the next semester, 6 months later. And Ralph Stevens, that was his name. Ralph Stevens walks in the door and said, we just had a person drop, looked at me and said, can you join now? So I literally felt the universe push me through the door.
Yeah.
And I started that afternoon. I was not prepared to stay in New Mexico for 6 months. So we literally had to, again, just, eat out of, the vending machines and whatever we could until we got a little bitty apartment. And it was like an efficiency apartment, you can imagine, to finish my education there. Again, fell in love, and I felt like I was in an international classroom setting. We had people from Canada, we had people from Germany, we had people from Russia, we had people from France, people from all over the country would come there to study. It was 50 people, 50.
Wow.
We had only one textbook, and it was a Mimler and Wood anatomy textbook on the level of what used to be called, maybe they're still called LPNs, licensed practical nurse. So not as high as you would find in other medical schools, but still a decent textbook. I just loved everything. In fact, I literally missed one class because I was sick, and I regretted it to this day, because you can't, even though you think you can make up the work, you really can't.
Yeah.
You cannot recreate that magic that happens in that classroom.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about how the change from New Mexico, I don't want to make assumptions, back to Louisiana. Is Louisiana home roots for you?
Yes. And my parents were still alive at the time, so I wanted to be back with them. And again, I had a child. So I came back to Louisiana and started a practice. Of course, you can't sit at home, wait for the phone to ring. So I did 2 days a week at a chiropractor, 2 days a week at a health club, because fitness was also another big thing going on in the 80s, and 2 days a week at a beauty shop, we called them back then. And from there, I did that for 2 years. And then from there, I had enough clientele to open up my private practice. And so I had started private practice within about 2 years. And within about 4 years, I had started the school in Lake Charles and started teaching at schools in Lafayette and Baton Rouge. So I was all over the place, and started having associates. So I developed the massage school side, and then I had myself almost like a co-op, if you would call it that, of massage practitioners in the 80s and 90s. And I kept the school to about 2013, which is about almost 30 years, 25 years, 30 years.
Wow.
And that's when I started working with curriculum and met wonderful people like David Lauderstein. I know you've had him on your show. And I just really enjoyed the ride. I mean, it's just been so fascinating. I sold the school in 2013 to a lovely couple, Karen and Alex Chaumont, when my mother passed away. That was kind of my crisis, and realized if I'm going to do something, I got to do it now. So I went back, got my doctorate, and then I had to take speech therapy because I had a speech impediment.
Really? So
I thought, if I'm going to start lecturing across the country, I'm going to have to get this fixed. So I went to a local university in their speech department, and the woman was actually a theater department major. She was fantastic and taught me how to control my mouth movements enough to overcome that speech impediment.
Wow. What I'm hearing a lot in you describing your journey is a lot of, again, like most of the people we've had on here, a lot of self-determination and a lot of just making it happen and finding a path to make this happen for yourself. I don't know if I have a follow-up question for that. I think I just want to acknowledge that, and thank you for making that happen.
Tell students when again, I'm always in the classroom. And so I watch students struggle with decisions they made. Did they make the right decision? For me, when I got out of school, the conversation mentally was never if it worked, ever. And it was always when it worked. I just had to find the right set of circumstances for it to work for me. So I tell my students that story because I want them to have the right mindset. Don't feel like maybe. No. You have to commit and just find, because we have a lot of, oh my God, massage profession is the biggest practice spectrum I have ever seen in any other profession. So you can find your path, but you got to want it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask really quickly, how did the shift from practitioner to starting the school come about? What really brought that into fruition for you?
I was lonely. No, it was like, and so there was no one else near me. So I thought, I'm just going to have to create a family. And that's really what it was about.
Really?
So I started networking with colleagues to create that. I had Margie Birch in Lafayette, and we connected and started a school there. And then I contacted Vernon Smith, or he contacted me. He was in Baton Rouge, and so I would network with him. And so that's kind of how the whole thing got started, was just we needed a bigger family.
Gotcha.
A tribe, I like to call it.
Yes, absolutely. Finding and building that community. So to understand, there wasn't really that much happening around where you were, and so you decided to just build that community for yourself and make those connections.
We had interesting to think about the Cajun culture. We had what's called traiteurs, which is French for the treater. And so they were like the spiritual, physical healers of the day. Again, no formal training, was mainly oral tradition. Reflexology was huge here.
Okay.
Oh, have you seen Mr. LeBleu? Oh, have you seen Miss Hawkins? And when I got down here, and then you had the YMCA. And at the time, similar to the bathhouses in where you are, you could go there and you could have, I call it the thermal suite, where you had the steam and the sauna, and it included a free 20-minute massage. And so we did have a little bit of massage here. The women, actually, when we started the school and we had the state licensure where you had to take a test, we actually gave these women that worked in these places free education.
Wow.
Because, I mean, they weren't high-paying jobs. And that was kind of a nice way to reduce barriers for them. So we did have a little bit here, but it was the Cajun culture, reflexology, and a little bit of the YMCA.
Gotcha. Interesting. And then I always ask, when you got out of your entry-level education, was there like a path of speciality or continuing education that you really wanted to follow? Big names, either locally, regionally, nationally, that you really attached yourself to?
Well, I love psychology. So that's going to be a common theme for my whole life. And psychology is defined as the study of human behavior. And actually, education is a branch of psychology. So it's important to know that. And when I was going through school, energy work was probably my strongest modality, but I didn't enjoy it. So I wanted to find something that was energy based, but that involved more physical movement. And that's when I found Traeger. So probably my very first trainings I took was the Traeger work, psychophysical integration. And I absolutely loved his system because he took an educational approach. You didn't come receive a session, you come to learn a lesson, right? And he also he put all the pieces together. So he said that you had 3 parts of his method, his approach. Number 1, you had the table work, right? Number 2, you had he called it hookup. I know what it means now, get it? But he called it hookup, which meant the mental attitude of the practitioner, which is another big thing that I think we should be focusing on. Is he said, with mirror neurons and things like that, that if you're relaxed, your client will relax more. And we would call it mindfulness now. But he did that, again, that wasn't popular back then until Ella Langer came on the scene much later. And the third one was, he called it mentastics, for mental gymnastics,
Mm.
but it was more of a self-care, what we would call self-care activities of stretching the range of motion so your nervous system, very neurological approach. So your nervous system could recall, again, NLP was really big back then in the 80s, neurolinguistical programming and anchors. You guys remember these great concepts. And and how Milton even came about with this idea was, he's a physician, and he said that he saw a man, let's call him Kirby, and Kirby was walking down the hall, and when he would call his name, he was so stiff in his muscles that he had turned his whole body to face Milton.
Right.
But when he was under anesthesia, completely, relaxed, it took him several nurses to not dislocate his joints. But when he came out of the anesthesia, he watched the man go from this to. So Milton said, wait a minute, where'd that tension go? It wasn't in the muscles. It was in his mind.
Mm.
So his whole approach is about, I don't care what's going in the muscles, I care what's going on between the right and the left ear. So he reprograms the brain, again, neuroplasticity. Again, that wasn't we're talking about that back then. But through the law of facilitation, we did have that, the law of facilitation. And that, what is the other one? Neurons that fire together, wire together. Another one. So he was all over that stuff, but he took, because of the hookup, it was an energy-based approach. And going back to psychology, what was happening in the 80s was there was a lot of exploration about the mind. There was a lot of a focus on addiction and a recovery. And insurance companies were paying for treatment hospitals, 28-day treatment hospitals, to recover not only from addiction, but also things like physical or sexual abuse. So Traeger's way was clothed, okay, and no lubricants.
Yeah.
So I could work with women who were physically or sexually abused. And that was my focus in the 80s.
Wow.
So doing Traeger gave me the tools that I needed to actually go in those hospitals and work with psychologists. It's almost like psychology calls it systematic desensitization. Remember that term?
No.
If these women hated being touched, so if you touch them in a very nurturing, non-sexual way, it is part of their recovery. And then I connected with Dr. Fred Orr, another psychologist in my hometown, and we started teaching classes together in the 80s.
Really?
And he would take what he said from the neck up, and I would take from the neck down. And so we just started integrating all that he was doing with what I was doing. And it really still, and I'm so glad that massage is gone back. The pendulum is swinging back to the neuroendocrine effects of massage. We're focusing less on the physical, postural, circulatory effects that were so heavily taught in the 80s and 90s. That's really going away. And we're going into more of what Milton was talking about, 40 years ago.
I'll just take this moment to say that that approach was also quite heavily taught and emphasized in the 2000s and 2010s whenever that I came into my entry level. So yeah, I think it's important that we try to revisit that and recognize the benefits of the neurological approach. Bear with me. I'm going to try and make some connections to some other episodes that we've had. You bring up psychology. I'm wondering if I can relate that back to David Lauterstein's episode where he talks about Gestalt therapy. Am I totally off base in trying to make a connection there? Can you speak to that at all?
I've never taken Gestalt, so that would be David's jam. But no, David and I have often shared the same love of psychology, of body-centered psychology. But this whole thing with zero balancing. I took a different path, but they're parallel.
Okay.
In a lot of their philosophies. Again, the similarities are strong, the differences are weak. So I do completely agree with you that David and I are probably on the similar paths.
All right. And then I'm also going to try and make a connection. By the time this episode airs, we will have had a conversation with George Kuselius, And you bring up a lot of work in the 80s about working with addiction, and I believe that is part of his history. What was the deal with connection? And I suppose also what you were doing sounds a lot like what people might describe these days as like trauma touch.
Trauma-informed care is something that wasn't really talked about a whole lot. In fact, we actually were kind of discouraged from it for a long time because it's out of our scope of practice, and we're dealing with content that we should not be dealing with. So I still have a mixed bag about that right now. I want to know what we're talking about and how it's going to be applied. But yes, going back to the concept of working with clients like that. But again, I was working under psychologists. I wasn't working on my own. And so, and also I was in substance abuse counseling for a while. Thought I wanted to be a psychologist. But it's a messy profession, and I like the touch too much. In psychology, you're taught not to touch.
Right.
And so it was like, so how do you keep those boundaries? And so even though I have the training, I really don't apply it to myself. I apply it in my education, but I really don't apply it to my practice as much. And it's going to be interesting to see how we navigate that. So I do think that that's the direction we're going. I'm actually going to have that in my next book, but I'm very careful about my words.
It pays to be careful, and especially with, sometimes the conversation comes up about encroaching on scope of practice or doing things that are not within our scope of practice, and some people are a little bit fast and loose with that themselves. So I appreciate, I think caution can always be called for. I also want to keep talking a little bit about your background and your journey through massage. Did you ever serve on your state regulatory board after that came into being?
Called a lot when they have questions.
Sure.
I'm very good friends with the board. I like to be in a consultation capacity or a committee capacity. I do a lot of, I've worked with all the major organizations, AMTA, ABMP, NCBTMB, Federation, obviously the Interstate Compact, and Massage Therapy Foundation. So all the biggies I've been involved in some way, and actually still am to a lot of extent. And I love the work. I mean, going back to I'm lonely. It's a way for me to network with some amazing people. Oh my God. I feel energized as much as anything else when I come back from a convention or an item writing session. We just had one in Kentucky, and it was just a blast.
I bet I can relate to that a whole lot myself. Even though there's so much to do, and you never feel like you accomplish everything you want to at gatherings of massage therapists, especially ones that are like national. People come in and you get together from people from all kinds of different states and regulatory backgrounds and practice backgrounds. It is really energizing as much as it could be draining. It really is. These are my people. I love these people so much. Even the ones I don't agree with, they're just, they have my heart. So talk a little bit about your involvement with the professional organizations. I'm assuming AMTA was the first for you to really connect with and get involved with. How did your involvement with the others come about?
Volunteering. You just put your name in the hat and hope they call you. I have a friend, Elon, who talks about, I got the golden ticket. I always think about that when I get called. So, but basically writing items, it's a really good experience to be able to write items. What is entry level, what's not, what's niche, what's not. Coursework, I just finished a cultural competency course for AMTA for their CE stuff. I actually just reviewed a cultural competency course for the Federation. And so, again, I am not like pro one organization. I'm pro massage.
Right.
And so I can play well on opposite sides of the fence.
Sure.
Because that's where my heart is. And I tend to make good decisions. I have a process that I go through. I don't make them quickly. And that has paid off because another big thing I do is I'm involved with legal cases.
Right.
And so I just finished one that involved a massage gun. It was, oh my God, it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And so that's still ongoing. But the lawyer is now deposing the CEO of the gun company.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So but you read these depositions, you read the state law, and you can really make connections and to say, should this have happened, or could we have done a better job protecting the public?
Can we talk about, and maybe these two kind of fit together, perhaps. I want to talk about how your textbook came into being, how that started. But I also want to ask about how you got started being involved in these legal cases and being an expert witness.
Okay, so two very different questions.
Okay.
So I'll talk about textbooks first. Back in the 90s, the early 90s, all we really had as far as massage textbooks goes, we had Sandy's book. Sandy was Mosby. We had W.B. Saunders, which had Beard's massage.
Yes.
And we had William E. Wilkins, who had the Travail books.
Okay.
So I was called to write a prospectus. I had to look this up. I didn't know what a prospectus was. For a book, because they heard about my schools being very successful in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge, and New Orleans, that kind of stuff. So I wrote a prospectus, and and when the woman called me back, her name was Michelle Pfeiffer, not the Michelle Pfeiffer, but her name was Michelle Pfeiffer. And she says, we have like a dozen prospectuses, but the reason why I was chosen over all these other ones is because, her words, not mine, I had the most bread and butter prospectus. I took a very logical, practical approach to the curriculum, but very, solid. Okay. So I started writing. So when I wrote, and of course, I have a learning disability. So when I wrote my book, I was very keen on take out any superfluous words. Why use 100 words when 50 will do? And about reducing reading barriers. That was my big push. Plus, I was already in college, taking literally one semester at a time. I couldn't go full time because I was working and had a child. So I was in psychology. So my books actually echo or mimic a lot of books that you would find in a psychology class.
Okay.
The quotes, the emphasis on people, which is the bios in the book. Getting a historian to write the history chapter. Getting a person who is familiar with sports massage to write the sports massage chapter. Getting someone who knew Eastern stuff. I knew everything about it. I just had to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
So I hired Kenneth Zisk to write the very first editions for the Eastern Asian bodywork stuff. So I wanted to be a conductor with, I always visualize this when I'm writing a book. I got the string section, the horn section, the percussion section, and then all these sections work together. And I've got the big vision, how it's supposed to sound in the symphony. So, and it worked. It worked beautifully. It was very well received. I didn't make any money until like the third edition, but I also read the Stephen King book on writing. And he says the same thing. He really didn't make a check until he was in his third book, which is Carrie, by the way. And so that's how it started, is just rolling the dice, being very intentional about who my audience was. And even then, I didn't use the word evidence-based. Evidence-based really didn't come till later. But I was always very curious, and I was careful about making decisions. What to keep in and what to keep out.
Right.
So that kind of happened. And the other question was what?
Becoming a legal expert.
Oh my God. Okay. So it started just kind of by accident. There was a case that happened where a massage therapist was injured in a car accident. And so my first report was about the physicality of the work, because they were arguing, because massage is so physical, now she has all these injuries because of the car accident. How do you determine award and damages? So again, because I had already started writing papers in college, I wrote my reports like I was writing a scholarly paper. So every opinion I had, not because Susan said so, but it's because Kirby said so. And Kirby had a peer-reviewed article here, or I took a lot of information Like, you need to look this up, called ONET. I think I posted on the ELAP stuff earlier. Because if it said, talked about coordination and strength, I was able to use that because it's published by the United States Department of Labor Statistics. And guess what they added recently? Person who's working on the ELAP, psychology. It's under knowledge. I checked this morning. So that was my first legal case. My second legal case was, oh my God, it was probably a landmark case.
Okay.
It was anterior neck massage, scalenes, and SCM that caused a dissection. So that was my second one. And that was a $20 million case award. That put my name on the map. And so we want Susan to write our cases. And so I started just getting called a lot. And so last year I did 7 cases.
Wow.
And I do turn cases down. If I know, I hate to use the word win, because no one wins in a legal case. Someone's been injured, whether massage did it or not.
Right.
Someone's been injured. So my job is to go in there, look at the evidence, and tell them what I think happened. Always looking at the law, looking at standards of care, which is different than scope of practice. Being mindful of documentation. I cannot say this enough. This is what hurts massage therapists the most, other than just making careless mistakes, is not having enough documentation. The intake matters. Your consent matters. I'd say in half the legal cases I've worked on, that the client was not given adequate notice about the techniques that were used and the possible harm that can be caused from it, going back to the massage gun case. None of that happened.
Wow.
And so the therapist will be liable for any damages to the public. So they're all fascinating. But it was just kind of being at the right place at the right time. And going back to Monica Reno, who's another wonderful friend massage therapist, is I mentioned the other day about me being lucky. And she goes, oh, baby, no. She says, there's no such thing as luck. Luck is talent meeting opportunity. And I love that. And so I think that I had the opportunity, but I had to make sure I had the talent, the ability, KSAs, to pull it off. And I'll tell you what, when I wrote my very first legal report, remember I told you I'm not original. I went to a friend of mine who was a paralegal, and I said, I need to see what one looks like.
Yeah.
And so she gave me one from a doctor, one from a economist, accountant, because you have to have someone to look at the numbers and give their best estimation. And in this case, a physicist, my favorite one, to talk about the angles of force and impact and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So again, triangulation, always a magic number 3. But that helped me know what it needed to look like.
Right.
And now I've read a lot of reports, because in every case there is an expert on both sides.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm curious, do you get to, because these are court cases, they're legal proceedings, do you get to keep your work that you do on these?
You're very good at this. The answer is, if the case settles out of court, and so far every case I've worked on is settled.
Wow.
Usually there's a gag order, and you have to destroy everything, because some businesses and massage therapists or lawyers, really, they're running the show, doesn't want this work to get out because it could hurt their reputation. Because remember, they don't lose their license.
Right.
This is a different animal, a different legal animal. And so typically the answer is no. I can talk about them, again, going back to HIPAA and how they correlate. I can give you states where they happened, but no geographic region smaller than a state.
Wow.
I can talk about them in general, but I cannot say anything that would lead you to a business or a practitioner. And they become great stories for my presentations at state conferences, as you've been in the classroom and a couple of those.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd have a segue into this, because I have had the pleasure of sitting in at your classroom and your presentations a few times now. I've been very blessed in that. You really emphasize storytelling in your education, and I'm wondering if you can speak to where that comes from.
Oh my gosh, I guess my teachers. being an educator, being a person who studied education pretty extensively, what brings the content alive in a textbook is the stories from the teachers. They make connections. They give the human element. A textbook is just data. That's why I put the bios in there. I want to remind everyone that this information is on the shoulders of people who came first, and we're just going back to history, and so we have to pay them homage and respect where it comes from, understand the past, so the future will not be repeated.
Exactly.
So very, very important. So yeah.
I think the bios are a stroke of genius in the textbook. As someone who does love history and love learning the names and the stories of the people who really, we've talked about it before, paved the way for newcomers like myself to come into this profession and have so many advantages already laid out at my feet, so to say. So I think those are great. I'm wondering, though, you did mention during writing the textbook that you were able to have experts write certain parts of the textbook. I'm wondering specifically about the history. How were you able to find the right person to write the history part of the text for you?
Well, there's in academia, there's something called publish or perish. And so I went to the history department in my university and I said, I need a chapter. And Michael Tarver said yes. I think it's H. Michael Tarver. I think that's his real name, full name. I think Michael is his middle name. And what's interesting about his first edition, he actually is now I think he's in Arkansas now.
Really?
You need to check. Yeah, I think so. I think he moved to Arkansas. But he said that when he started doing the research for the chapter, that the history of medicine and the history of massage parallel each other. So I loved that spin on it. So it gave me a whole lot more respect. I already had a lot of respect for massage, but it gave me more respect. Plus, he's looking at it from a historical perspective, not a massage perspective, which I think we need sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk I want to know which came first for you, the doctoral degree, the further education in academia. Did that come before the textbook? No?
I do everything backwards. So I get the contract from the book author. I'm like, maybe I need a degree with this. So I didn't get my doctorate till much later. But I'm kind of glad that I did it that way because every project has a massage slant. So when I did all my psychology work, I did it on Harry Harlow or Renee Spitz or people who were doing touch research and touch deprivation research. So I was able to put that flavor into my writing. But no, I tell people I'm smart, but I'm slow smart. I'm kind of a late bloomer.
The time's going to pass anyway is how I sometimes think about that. And better slow than never at all, right? I don't know. Let's shift gears and talk about, because I know you're super big on research. You kind of scare me how much you love research. Is there any specific story or anecdote that you can share from your experience about history or anything that you really find fascinating that you're drawn to when you look at history of massage?
Not in terms of research, but I will say this. Okay. So when I'm writing my next edition right now, and I just finished chapter 14, which is clinical massage. And every time that I start talking about a method like MET, PNF, I always spin in there one or two sentences about the history. Who developed this? Why was it developed? And are we using it today in ways that are different? And the answer is usually yes.
Yeah.
Even when I give the definition of massage, I always have this one slide that I pop up that talks about the Chinese Tui Na. And we define massage as compression and decompression. Tui Na literally means press on and pick up. So they're literally we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So I like to give that historical perspective when I'm giving the definition of massage and to see that it really hasn't changed that much. in 3,000 years. Our understanding is dramatically changed. Do not get me wrong, Kirby.
Right.
But the methods themselves, not that much.
Right.
And I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. If technique is foundational, it's good that it hasn't changed. I'll just go ahead and make that wager. Are there any specific, I'm sure there are several, any specific trends or movement that you've witnessed in massage therapy that really stick out?
The movement toward seeing massage through the lens of behavioral science. I think that is the biggest thing. I have a lot of respect for research. This is one study done by Mark Rappaport in Atlanta, and the question was asked for anxiety and depression, that if people are diagnosed with these conditions and they start taking medications, it takes about 6 to 12 weeks before they start really working. So is there something we can do in that interim between the time the person's diagnosed and the time the person in medication starts to work that will help reduce symptoms? So they tried massage.
Really?
And it worked in one session. So they basically had them do 2 sessions a week, 2 1-hour sessions a week for 12 weeks. And it filled in the gap and got them in a good headspace before the medication started working. That blew my mind. And those kind of studies, again, I think in fact, I read one place where if you look at the referrals from the medical profession, psychologists and psychiatrists are leading the way.
Really?
And going back to the whole concept of pain with the neuromatrix model and the biopsychosocial model, they've actually added one. They have neuropathic pain, nociceptive pain. They added this last few years nociplastic pain. And that went into my new textbook coming up. And it just goes to that more. There's a whole lot more psychology behind pain. 85% of pain, 85%, Kirby, is non-specific.
Yeah.
There's no underlying cause. So going back to Traeger, maybe it is between the left and the right ear.
Yeah.
And that's where our focus should be.
Everything is. I've started describing to my clients that I'm working with, I think I see massage right now, the metaphor I'm using is it's a negotiation between my nervous system and your nervous system. And where can we make a deal is really, I think that's kind of how I'm defining massage right now. Thank you. So I would assume that you would say that looking at massage therapy through a behavioral lens is something that's ongoing, a movement that is ongoing. Yes?
Yes, but it started, like you said, decades ago. We have not been spotlighting it as much as we could have, should have. But I think, like you said, with all the trauma-informed care and the focus on, sort of say Oxycontin, but oxytocin, and Oxycontin. I mean, yeah, we could say that.
Yeah, sure.
The whole thing about 2017, American Medical Association said they cannot prescribe opioids without at least trying one non-pharmacologic intervention.
Right.
This is what put massage on the map in terms of healthcare.
Right.
Because I think I told you the story that this is when they changed CAM to KIN. They realized people are not going to refer people to a person who practiced alternative medicine. So Obama said, no problem, bad term, we're going to retire it. So the National Institutes of Health said, we're going to call it complementary and integrative healthcare. And that's what we're under now. When they did that, that opened the gates up to massage. And then something else happened. So I was at a conference. I had the best conversations in bathrooms. I kid you not. This is where everyone goes to talk. I don't know why it is that way, but so I'm in the bathroom at the National Convention in Dallas, Texas. I know that this is where it's going to be this year. But it was in Dallas, Texas, 2013.
Okay. And
I was talking to a physician who just was on a panelist about using massage in this context and using for referrals. And she says, I'm so sick of massage therapists telling me massage reduces pain, massage reduces depression, massage reduces anxiety. Give me the recipe. Tell me what they did in the study to produce those results. When she said that in the bathroom in Dallas, Texas, I could hear this bomb go off in my head So when I wrote my next pathology book, that's what it is. So what I did was every single pathology has what I call a literature review, not just giving you what they found, but what they did to produce those results, the recipe. So massage therapists have it, and what I ended up doing, Kirby, was I'm taking that content now, and I've updated it for the new edition. I've taken that content now, and I have put it on blogs. So as you see me start to post, like the one about autism or the one about dialysis recently, I'm taking those excerpts now and making them public even before the book is actually published.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. Nice little appetizers for the book before it comes out. Yeah.
I love your metaphors. You're good at this.
Yeah, I like to think of the world, easy ways to communicate with other people. Because sometimes things can be a lot more complicated than we actually need them to be. Like we stand in our own way so much as we move through life. I want to know, there's this YouTube video out. It has really been foundational in kind of sparking a passion for massage therapy history for me. It's by Castilia Media. Talk to me, who is Castilia Media? How did that come about? It's a 5-person panel of experts. You're on that panel. How did that come into being? And talk to me about that, please.
I know David says it was me. I think it was him. Yeah, so I get a phone call, and Benny Vaughn was on, so I'm friends with Benny as well. And he says they want you to be interviewed. And because I guess geographically I was in the loop, because David's in Austin, I'm in Louisiana. And so I said, sure. So I agreed to talk because I love history. And then it was recorded. It was put on a DVD.
Really?
And nothing was ever done with it. I took it, my own volition, and put it on YouTube. But I did, out of respect for the media company, if you read the little F's, do not own this. This is owned, was done by, and I didn't monetize it. So if you ever see commercials on it, shame on YouTube. I did not monetize it out of respect for the company. The man, actually, he's in the video. If you go back to the video, he's the guy taking the test. Very wonderful guy.
Yeah.
And he said, take it down right now. It's mine. And I said, what you going to do with it?
Yeah.
I said, because our profession needs this. I know you're not a massage therapist, but you've done something important.
Right.
And I told him, look, I'm not taking credit for it. I'm not monetizing it. Please reconsider. I kept with my, groveling, begging, and it worked. So he has graciously allowed me to keep it up.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the story of the video. It wasn't me. I think it was David.
We'll have to have a debate episode, Salvo versus Lauterstein. Where did this video come out from? I want to ask you about the other 2 panelists. So far, we've done an episode with David. We've had an episode with Benny. Now we're talking with you. Who are Alex and Teresa, the other 2 panelists?
I have no clue.
Oh, no. Not Texans or Louisianians, I assume.
I don't know. Again, they're great. They're great. But I don't know how the media company found them, or did David know or Benny know?
I didn't go that far into the conversations with them. But yeah, I was just curious, since you're the third one. So maybe we'll just keep the phone lines out there. If Alex and Teresa are watching this, get in contact with the society. Yeah. Call us up. You also, previously in this episode, you talked about definitions. Your participation in that video starts with a definition. And I want to kind of ask you maybe the importance of definitions, the best way to come up with definitions. And I kind of want to give you a couple of examples. Really big ones right now that are being used are, of course, the ones that are found in textbooks, but there are also those in statutes in the states that are all over the place, a patchwork of difference. And then really popular ones right now are Anne Blair Kennedy's, of course, and the definition that the VA system is using now. So I'm just curious about your thoughts on defining.
Okay, so question now. You sparked my interest. I just agreed to do a veterans talk on Veterans Day.
Okay.
A group in North Carolina.
Mm.
And I looked this up this morning, and do you know what definition they use? Is medical massage.
Ah,
Yeah, I found it this morning.
okay.
So how do I find definitions? I do a couple of different things. I look in the right places. I don't make them up. If you go back and look at the word, what therapy really means, we probably should not be using it like we're using it.
Yeah.
We really should not be. So what I do is I do what's called concept mapping. Again, it's a very research-based, evidence-based process where I look at research studies. I look at the legal definition in statutes, and I pull all the common concepts together. And that's where the definition comes from. That is a defendable definition. Other professions do concept mapping. Why can't we?
Yeah.
So my definitions are grounded in encyclopedias and in research studies. And that's the only place I'm going for them.
I also, and it's okay if this is kind of a curveball if you're not prepared to answer this. In the video, you also talk about the history of massage or touch in Native American cultures. Do you have any, since that video was made, do you have any other thoughts, supplemental information, anything else you could share in terms of a indigenous cultures perspective?
Interestingly enough, no. And I took an active search recently because I've added new bios to the book, and I wanted to have a more indigenous presence. So I looked in the Hispanic culture, and I looked in the indigenous culture, and I could not find any written compilation,
Yeah,
anything.
right.
And we have more on Lomi Lomi than we do on any other culture. So I did add, just if you're curious, I
Okay.
added Auntie Margaret with Lomi Lomi, Polynesian massage.
Okay.
I added Beasley for first African American woman
Beautiful.
massage therapist, and I added Sarah Fogarty. And again, I did not write these bios. I need you to understand. I help pick them. Usually, I do kind of the vetting that I did with you.
Okay.
And I wanted to do someone who was deceased, except for Sarah,
Okay.
because Sarah's an Australian, by the way,
Ah,
and because then it's a popularity contest. Why didn't you pick me?
yeah.
And it gets really weird really fast. So those are the three I chose, and I chose Sarah mainly because of her work on research with women's issues, women's studies.
Gotcha.
And Aldrich did that one, by the way. And so again, and I try to reach out to people who I think have writing talent, because it's just because you like to read doesn't mean you're going to make a good writer. so and the woman Rita LeBlue, who is a columnist, she's not a massage, well, she actually is a massage therapist now, but I got her to do the majority of them. Ralph Stevens has done some bios for me. In fact, David just updated his, which I appreciate. Thank you, David. So yeah, those are the new bios that are going to be in the book, and the rest of them will just be on Evolve, because I obviously got to move things out to make room for the new ones.
Gotcha.
But nothing on indigenous culture that I could find. I would love to know more.
Yeah.
If it's available.
Right. Of course. Yeah. I wonder if that comes from largely oral traditions, and then also a dismantling from the United States of indigenous culture being shut down, forgotten, and lost, except for small pockets where it's been able to live and be carried on through generations in familiar ways, right?
Yeah.
Do you engage in any sort of historical preservation of massage therapy?
Just through my books. That's the main thing. If I have it, it's going to be in my books.
Okay.
Physical artifacts, not really. I tend to be a minimalist. And I hope there will be one day a museum. I know there was talk about having something in Boulder for a while with Mike Hinkle, I think is his name.
Okay.
But it never, I don't think it ever happened. I know Julie's got a lot of stuff. I know you've collected a lot of stuff. But I myself, if I have it, I'm going to give it to you.
Okay. Deal. I assume you have a collection of your personal work then, articles perhaps that you've written, interviews maybe even, obviously the textbooks. In terms of historical preservation, do you have any insights or thoughts, maybe as someone who doesn't collect as much, on the importance of preservation of the history and the importance of archiving?
Great, 3 points.
All right.
The first is to help students understand the appreciation of the evolution of ideas.
Okay.
I love to talk about how did this thought start. In fact, in research, it's called, I love this word, the seminal work. Seminal, yes, semen is the key word here, means seed of possibility. So someone had to do the first piece of research on a topic. So I think that we need to understand, where did this idea come from? So that's the first thing. Number two is, as we've already been talking about, cultural influences. I think that it's important to understand the cultural influences and to not be offended when people say masseuse and masseur. It's just French is part of our history. They're not saying anything vulgar or derogatory to you. And the third thing is the diversity of techniques. So I think those are the three things of why history should be taught, preserved, and collected, is evolution of ideas, culture, and appreciation of cultural influences, and the diversity of techniques. And all these three things, I believe strongly, can enhance our practice for safety and for effectiveness.
Gotcha.
And culturally sensitive.
Yes.
Practice. So I think we need that foundation.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's cultural humility and sensitivity is something that's becoming more and more in our eyes as massage therapists, and something that we're trying to do. I wonder if that's connected to that move from alternative practices to integrative practices. Do you see a correlation there?
Yeah, I think so. I like that.
I'm wondering can you think of any specific ways that what you just talked about, the triangulation of why history is important in a practical sense? Like, how do we make the argument? Obviously, you and I, we understand it. We don't have to preach or convince each other. But how do we bring that to the broader consensus and conversations and consciousness?
I'm doing my job by putting it in the textbook.
Yeah.
So you have to stumble over it if you use my textbook in your classroom. Teachers have got to be well-versed in it and make it so bloody entertaining. I put on a show. I wear my Doctor Who Tom Baker scarf. I mean, and it is a show. And we talk about it, and people go, oh my God, not history. And by the end of going, so you engage them. And then, so that's how I do it. How you could do it is being present at conferences, having it as a course that people can take. I did one course. It's a CE it's approved by NCBTMB, one course, and it has been requested one time in 10 years.
Wow.
It was amazing. People were like going cuckoo banana pants, but it's not something that you would say, yeah, I think I want to take a history course.
Yeah.
So you just have to make it part of the culture. It's part of every conference. Maybe we used to have a historical section. Patricia Benjamin, I'm sure you run across her.
Yeah.
In the AMTA journal, maybe ask to bring that back, but because it was a big part of AMTA in the 80s.
Right.
So, and now it's research. So why not history?
Right.
But I think that there is a way to make it more part of the conversation, but it takes repetition.
Sure. Absolutely. I kind of want to ask then, what do you think, or what would you hope the future has in store for historical research in our profession?
My hope is just that more people are teaching it. More schools are teaching it, making it part of their curriculum. I know it's not a popular topic, but I think it's a necessary topic, especially if it's taught from a past, and again, the evolution of ideas, present, and then how can we use that to look at the future? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the way I see it rolling out. But every time I teach a class, I always mention the history of the idea. How do we even think about this? And also etymology. I'm a big fan of etymology.
Do you have any advice for those who are just now maybe getting interested in how they can learn more or explore the history of massage?
Listen to podcasts, read about it. I mean, and this is the thing, if we want this to be part of the culture, we have to make it accessible. And reduce barriers. So get it out there, talk about it. All the pictures, you got so much in your archives. Start taking pictures and posting it. Ask people to share it and start these conversations that we talked about earlier. Because if they're grounded in history, they're going to have a rich context. So that's kind of how is again just making it more accessible. Help create a culture of history through exposure.
Let's talk about, I want to know, in terms of your own personal evolution, how has your understanding of massage therapy evolved with an understanding of history?
I guess with the understanding of history is back to our comment earlier that the techniques themselves really has not changed. It's our understanding that is changing. And sometimes I'll see a new workshop coming out and I'll get this Loggins and Messina song in my head. Same old wine in a brand new bottle. So it's just, just understand the commonalities in all things and don't criticize. If you like a certain technique, don't think other techniques are inferior. So use that information to build bridges, not barriers.
Right. Okay. You also, to go way back to the beginning of our conversation, you talked about your first massage being performed by a doula or midwife. And you also talk a little bit about that in the history video. And you also are a pretty big name in prenatal massage, and you do a lovely presentation of it too, a really great one. I'm wondering if that is all connected, if that, played into your first introduction to massage being a prenatal massage, if that kind of played into like the path you would take.
Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I mean, it very well be sports massage. When I was in school, we had to come up with specialties, and couldn't decide, so I picked two. So I did a prenatal specialty and I did a sports massage specialty. But what I found when I got out of school was pregnant, we didn't have any money. And most of the sports massage were done by not personal trainers. That wasn't a thing then, athletic trainers.
Okay.
So it kind of threw me for a loop about how am I going to find my craft. And that's when I found the psychology piece. It was just because those other two doors were basically closed. The prenatal stuff actually the recent prenatal stuff was carved out of a request by other organizations. Not because I'm saying I want to do a class on prenatal massage, because they came to me and said, we want you to do a class on prenatal massage because we know you're going to base it on evidence. That's the reputation I've gotten. And then it's going to be a respected course because that's the foundation. And so when we come across all these little myths, my classes end up being myth busters, but that's not the point. The point is to make decisions on evidence.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole different what you bring to the table.
Did you always have such a love for research, or did that kind of have to develop?
It developed. Remember, I was uneducated. So if it seemed like, oh my God, too much, no. I think it was started when I started on my degrees and I had to read a lot of research. And I realized they're just stories. That's all they are. You read, and someone had an idea and they built an experiment to see if they could get more information. They're a group of very curious people. And that's, again, back to psychology. I think that was just fascinating to me, is how did they come up with this idea? And then when you read the discussion questions, to find out what led them to their dissertation. What led me to my dissertation was a dislike of online education. And I didn't like that dislike. So I wanted to know more about that topic. So my dissertation is on in the cultural piece, factors that influence online learning success in people of color. So I took the two pieces, and why I chose people of color, because sadly, they're a very understudied group.
Right.
No one's doing research on it.
Yeah.
So I was able to fill that gap in and to find out what works and what doesn't work in online education. So I have a much better appreciation for it now. But I got, and I'm going to quote this is, most of research is me search. So, and I think you probably can, that's probably true about your partner. It was, they had a question about something that was important, and they had to find a way to form a question that could be answered by research. I wanted to study people who were dropping out, but because of FERPA laws, didn't have access to that data.
Mm.
So FERPA is like HIPAA, but it's in education.
Gotcha.
So I had to change my dissertation topic to study factors that led to academic success. But a great study could be factors that lead people to drop out from those, because there's a high attrition rate in online classes. Why is that? Why is that?
Yeah.
So, but again, that's another question for another study, another day.
Again, with research, do you remember where you were when the Massage Therapy Foundation was introduced and rolled out?
1992, was it? 1990.
Okay.
Where was I? I was probably in my treatment room doing massages.
Yeah.
I love, now you probably know that it was a branch of the AMTA.
Right.
Then it became its own organization, and an independent organization in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always excited about it. But I didn't understand research until I started, number one, reading about it. Number two, doing my own research. That's what makes me a good person to evaluate studies, is because I've done studies myself.
I wonder if you can break down, maybe for people who are hearing this and interested, certainly myself, can you describe your process of research?
Oh my God, loaded question, Kirby. There's so many different types. There's qualitative, there's quantitative, there's literature reviews, there's case reports, there's mixed methods. I mean, there's phenomenological. There's so many types. You could probably do your own. There is retrospective studies, which are kind of fun. You know, research is a huge topic. It really is its own topic. But so do we want to make therapists research literate? But by not by doing their own research. I mean, there's going to be a population that does it. Yes, I'm one of them. But there needs to be a whole other group that are just consumers of research. And that's what we want to develop, is can you take a study and use it? That's why I put the literature reviews in the pathology book. Gotcha. Is so people can access it. When they want to know more about autism or ADHD or PTSD, it's there. The maps are there. You don't have to do your own research unless you have an idea for a study that has not been done.
Yeah.
That's a whole different animal.
Right.
That's what my future goal is. I had to write my mission statement, and is I want to advance the profession using education and research. So I do want to create a culture for research literacy and get people excited. When people start learning about studies, then they get excited.
Right.
But it's just, if you say, hey, research is fun, they're going to go, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, history is fun. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You have to make it juicy.
Yeah. Show me.
We have a great history. Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so much of it is happening right now. People wake up, you're living history. It's happening. Get engaged. Have your voice be a part of it. Have a hand in it. Who are your heroes in massage therapy, if you could pick a few?
Oh, well, David Lauderstein for sure. Benny Vaughn for sure. Bonnie Pruden for sure. There's so many of them. My teachers were like my parents in massage. My students are like my children. I mean, it's, I guess, probably those three, Milton Traeger. I mean, what a genius. I have a lot of heroes.
When you look back on at least the previous 40 years that you've had in the profession, what are you most proud of? What do you hope you'll be remembered for?
Oh, being a person who loves evidence, being a person who loves research, and being a person who loves psychology and empathy. Going back to my very first massage, it was empathy that led me to massage. And the empathy was, I was able to see massage and me through her eyes. And it was a beautiful vision. And I thought, yeah, I'm going there. But that's kind of what I want to be remembered for.
Okay.
And writing good textbooks.
Yeah, absolutely.
It takes a lot of work to write a textbook.
No kidding. How long does it take you to write those textbooks?
About 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
diligently, like writing it every day.
Yeah.
But I agonize. I've already told you this. I agonize over sentences. Agonize. I don't do word vomit. I'm very precise,
deliberate
about what I want to say, and I vet it out through other people. I had a friend of mine, Christy, who's helping me review chapters, and Nancy, and they're like, I love when she comments, "How did this happen?" or "Why?" And I said, "I love when you do that like a child." And she says, "Well, these are the kind of questions students are going to ask." So she said, "Should I not do that?" I said, "Oh no, honey, I need you to do that, because it gives me that empathy, that perspective, that I'm speaking to a larger audience."
Right. Yeah.
So it's very, very important.
Well, and it's what you hope students will ask questions like that, instead of just swallowing what they're given, right? You want them to think and ask questions and be engaged.
Yeah.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to share that I didn't ask that we should be sure to hold some time and space for right now?
I think you've done a fabulous job, Kirby. And I really enjoyed this. I was like terrified when you asked me, like, oh no. But you made it very painless.
Okay, good. Well, I'm kind of surprised to hear that, because one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk to you is, one, the mind that you do have for research and your carefulness about it, and two, what I assume is a love of history because of your participation in the online video out there. So yeah, I'm very honored and very glad that you agreed to bless us with this interview. Okay, just a few more closing questions before we get out of here then. If you could record and preserve any deceased person's account of massage therapy's history or their story, who would you choose?
Jack Marr. He wrote a book on equine massage therapy and later sports massage.
All right.
But he's just an interesting fella. I'd like to talk more to him.
Okay. I didn't know he had an equestrian out there. I was just aware of the sports book. All right. And then along those same lines, who would you encourage or challenge to be a future guest on this podcast? Who should we talk to next?
Oh my gosh, I have some ideas. Elon Schachter, for sure.
Okay.
He is fascinating. Karen Armstrong is another person I think would be a good candidate for the show. And Dawn Schmidt. And I would approach any one of those three and ask them to be a guest for some really interesting conversations.
Okay. Some of those names do ring a bell. And so, yeah, we'll have to reach out and see if they're interested in joining us here. Please tell us what you have coming up next, Dr. Salvo, or how listeners, viewers can get in contact with you.
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a website, susansalvo.com. And I'm pretty accessible, and I am responsive. If you have a question, sometimes I consider myself an information broker. Mm-hmm. If I don't know it, I know someone who does.
Right.
And so that's how to contact me. What I'm doing next is I'm going to be in North Carolina teaching in about next week. Oh my God, it's already Monday.
Wow.
And then I go to Portland to teach there, another state conference, and then I go to New Mexico to teach there. And then I'm going to Japan.
All right.
To take a study abroad class in Japan, Japanese filmography. Excited about that.
Oh, yes.
And then I just booked North Carolina again for Veterans Day to do a class on physical and mental health for veterans.
Very good. Excellent.
And writing the book.
And of course, writing the book. Does it have a deadline, a expected publish date?
Publish date, probably 9 months, but I'm a little behind. I actually did it backwards. I
Oh,
thought the pathology book was going to be first and the principle of practice would be second. And then I had a meeting and they said, no, 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 no. It's the other way around. So I was like, oh, okay. So now I'm in a time crunch.
yeah.
But I just finished 20 out of 30 chapters. So I'm doing good.
Okay. All right. Well, again, good luck with that too, because that sounds very daunting, especially to have a twist and a unexpected pivot there. Excellent. And if people want to get a copy of that book when it comes out, the best way to do that.
Amazon. It's just easy. Click, click, click. Boom. That's going to start calling Amazon. Click, click, boom.
Well, since we're changing names of everything these days,
Oh,
why not?
yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Susan Salvo. I want to thank you for being a part of this podcast, taking the time to sit down and share your story and your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Kirby.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.